Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the iPhoneography podcast. I'm Greg McMillan, and again, live on YouTube. Still getting used to how this thing will start, but we got a really good show tonight. Sound like Ed Sullivan there, and first I'm going to bring in. Let's see. Okay, I'm going to bring in Mr. Dave Podner. Hello, Dave. How you doing?
Doing good, Greg. How you doing tonight?
Not too bad.
Good to
So,
hear.
as everybody knows, Dave and our weather is almost the same. So I suspect you had a pretty decent day today.
It
Sunny?
was good, yeah. The weather
Yeah.
was good today. Last night we did have thunderstorms.
Oh, you should have seen what came through here yesterday. Holy, I have never seen. I gotta pull this up on my phone and put it on the screen because this is just absolutely crazy. Um, oh, where did I put it? Okay, I know where it is. It's in a message that I sent to somebody.
Well, while you're looking that up, if
Yeah.
you're a fan of American football, the Sunday night game last night for the NFL was
Was
here in
this the Houston
Pittsburgh.
game?
No, it was here in
Oh,
Pittsburgh,
oh,
Dallas,
okay.
Pittsburgh, and there
Oh, okay.
was a 90-minute thunderstorm delay because the game start was supposed to start at 8:20, but because of the thunderstorms, they had to get everyone out under cover, and the game
Yeah.
didn't end till like 12:30 in the morning. So I didn't find out the what
Oh,
happened until this morning because I'm like, yeah, I have work. I'm going into work today, and I'm no, I need sleep. I'm old.
yeah. So this is an app that I got that tracks lightning, and those are all those little wee dots are lightning strikes, and I mean it was just brutal. And I was at work when it came through, and so basically we have to shut the machines down in case of a lightning if the power surges, it could do some. Well, it could take us hours and hours to get some of these machines up and running again. There's a lot of electronics in them. So, but anyway, so now I will bring in our new co-host as of last week, Mr. Dwight Broman. Hello, Dwight.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Going really well. How
Excellent.
was the weather for you?
Well, it was foggy this morning, as you might see in one of the pictures I took earlier. And then it became about 90 degrees here today, so relatively warm. But I've been working all day, so didn't get to get outside too much except for this morning.
Yeah. Well, we went for a drive. This is my one day off in a span of 7 days. I got this one day off, so we took a drive out of town and enjoyed the nice weather for a bit. But we're really excited about this show because recently on Threads, I come across this chap who has developed an app called Fig, Fig, Fig Camera, and I've mentioned it a couple times on the show before. And we have with us all the way from Tokyo, Japan, Mr. Christian Sheehan. Hello, Christian.
Hello, thanks for having me on. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, so happy to have you here. Um, what really got me excited about this app to begin with was I came across it shortly after the folks at Halide introduced their Process Zero thing, and and the Process Zero works if you take a raw photo, you can run it through their image lab within their app, and it comes up with an image that is basically like it was taken with film, sort of like it's got no processing from Apple on it and all that stuff. When I discovered Fig and what it could do, it was like you managed to be able to produce the final image without putting it through anything else, like or without the user putting it through anything else. Um, it was like you bypassed that image lab thing that Halide does, and I mean I don't know how you did it, but I think it's cool. And it's I thought this was really awesome. You've really stumbled upon something really good here. Um, so real like okay, so what I usually do with a guest is I say, okay, in a in a tweet, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then
Sure.
we'll dive into Fig Camera.
Okay, sure. Sounds good. So my name's Christian. I'm an iOS developer from New Zealand who lives in Tokyo. And for the past year and a half, I've been working on a camera app called Fig. It's mostly a camera app that's just sort of trying to meet my own needs. But I've been having a lot of fun with image processors recently. So it's kind of exploring a lot of that kind of area at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me get this back. I'm bouncing around windows here. So what kind of drove you to develop a camera app? I mean, with so many camera apps out there, what was it that made you want to like design, a camera app like Fig?
So truthfully, it was kind of just as a developer, I kind of want to make my own software whenever I care enough about it. If there's any software that I use a lot, I'm always like, I kind of wish I could change this. I kind of wish I could put my own spin on it. And I love photography, so it just kind of seems like the perfect fit for me. It wasn't so much I was looking at other apps and I was like, these are bad. There's lots of great apps out there. It was just more like, I want to take a shot. So
Yeah, cool. So about a year and a half ago, you started developing it, and now it is still in beta, right?
yeah, it's still just on test flight. It's not on the App Store yet, but it is available for anyone to join and download.
Yeah. And when you first started developing it, did you like, I guess, okay, when it arrived in test flight, did it not arrive there until iOS 18 was out on beta? Because it was only available for iOS 18 beta releases, right?
Yeah, so the test flight initially required the iOS 18 beta. I have had previous versions that I didn't put on a public test flight, just for sort of friends and colleagues. But the app has changed drastically over the past year and a half. It's almost, I've been through a few different camera apps essentially. They just keep the same core, but then the whole UI has changed multiple times. But yeah, this version required the iOS 18 beta because I was using some new iOS 18 features. And trying to support the older versions didn't seem necessary because iOS 18 was so close. But now that it's out, everyone can try.
Yeah, cool. So Dwight, you've been playing around with it a little bit. Any thoughts or even questions for Christian about the app? Oh, you're muted. Still can't hear you.
There's that mute button.
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So last night you gave me the link to install the beta. I did that immediately, and I couldn't wait to get out early this morning. So not too long after sunrise, I went down to Laguna Beach and I took a few shots with it. And I did, I think is it the alpha setting?
Yeah, so there's a new sort of image process called alpha in there. There's two versions of it. One's alpha and one's alpha dramatic.
Okay. Yeah, so I just did the one that you took your first picture with, I think, Greg, alpha, just to try it. I haven't gone through it sequentially to try to compare. So I did take that back and edit it a little bit, and I was actually pleased with the results directly out of camera. I think that it was workable as is, but you know me, I'm kind of an editing freak, so I wanted to lift a few things here and there. But I guess my question I would have is, I'm not a big fan of Apple processing, period. I don't,
Yep.
especially right now with ProRAW, and my workflow is Lightroom to Photoshop. They haven't released the Adobe Standard or any of the profiles yet for the 16 series phones. So the curve for ProRAW and this 16 Pro Max is awful right now, in my opinion. So I think they need to rewrite that. I think for at least the 8-bit photos. But it was nice to use your camera, and it still opened it. No, it saved it as a hike, I think. So Yeah, so I didn't have to deal with that. Normally, what I do is I'll take the amount slider from ProRAW and bring it down to about 60%, then hit the auto button in lieu of not having any other profiles to choose from. But I guess my question for you would be, I think at some point does the stabilization of the camera that's in the I don't know, it's a software thing, I think, but does that drop off at some point on whatever camera selection you choose?
Sorry, the stabilization.
Yeah, because there's stabilization in the iOS app, I believe. Is it?
Yeah,
Is there not for camera? I think there is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if you maintain that through each of these different camera settings in the Fig app. I guess that was my question, or do we have to be more sensitive to camera movement when we're taking photos?
Right. So I'm not doing anything specific with adjusting stabilization settings. It will just be using the standard stabilization that Apple applies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would imagine just by looking at the what you have there for options in the camera, I would imagine, I mean, you're kind of telling me the same thing. You want other options yourself other than Apple processing for your workflow.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things I find with the standard Apple images is that they make everything sort of flat and light. And if you're trying to use like light and shadow for creative effect, it kind of works against you. Always trying to make everything visible. It's hard to sort of drop things into the shadows intentionally. And so that's what those two alpha image processors are doing at the moment. They turn off all of Apple's tone maps, which leaves you with a very sort of unviewable image. It's often really dark, it's very flat. And so then at that point, I adjust the exposure on the image and apply a tone curve to sort of add contrast and make it pleasing, sort of keep a nice sort of roll off in the highlights and add some depth in the shadows.
Oh, great. So you can recover details in the shadows a lot better than you can out of standard Apple ProRAW. I see people going on safaris using their iPhones and they come back and the actual pictures look like they were finger painted. Do you know what I mean? You've seen that look, I think. It's crazy.
Like
Wait, we're going to bring your two
noise
pictures
cancellation or noise reduction sort of.
Yeah, I think noise
blurriness?
reduction does that. Yeah.
Noise
Yeah.
reduction, yeah, especially if it's real heavy. I'm going to show your two pictures here, Dwight. Hopefully you can see that now. There we go.
Oh, that was this morning. Yeah, on my walk. Yep, that was
Yeah.
out of camera.
Nice.
So, yeah, and this was out of camera, and this was after you had processed it.
Yeah, so I was able to I isolated the sky in the foreground, and I was able to lift the shadows up a little bit. There is a slight color grade applied to this as well, but this is a film look that I'm just digging right now. It's not over processed. It's just, I didn't spend a lot of time on this, and I like this look, and I'm liking it more and more as I progress in photography.
Yeah, this is really nice.
so-
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Christian, is the idea behind some of these different settings that you have? Is it just basically to give a good starting point, or are some of them intended to be the basically straight out of the camera finished photo? I mean, I know anybody can edit any image, but did you intend to try to make it so that you didn't have to edit? Is that kind of what your thinking was, your thought process?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people would like to not, or a lot of people don't edit their photos, right? And they would like to get a pleasing image out of camera. But I think a camera app, it's better for an app to support different workflows. Like pretty much everyone has a different photography workflow. So trying to lock people into one specific thing is not really benefiting anybody. So I do want it to be flexible, but yeah, if you want to get a good image out of camera, I do want to help you get there. One of the features in the app is a sort of an image process builder where you can build your own image process. And the intention for that is to try and help people who know what they want get their own look straight out of camera. And hopefully they won't require further editing, but at the current state, you might still need to do some adjustments, I would say, yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think a lot of that is limited to the sensor size, right, of the iPhone. I almost feel like really, if you're not taking something and posting it immediately on Instagram or something like that with your friends, to me it seems like there's always just a little bit of work to kind of bring the scene back to how you remember it.
Yeah, I think people are so used to how edited images look. I mean, pretty much all photography has been edited throughout history. So most of the looks that we like are edited looks, and trying to apply the same edit to every single photo is unlikely to actually give you a great result every time. So yeah, often the more subtle adjustments work better as a standard thing to apply to every photo. If you begin to lean into heavy adjustments, it's likely to sort of crash and burn on some photos. It might work great on others, but yeah.
Yeah, when I first started, I would always boost the saturation up a lot. It's like, well, there's a saturation slider. I need to really cook this thing, and now I don't even like touching that unless I'm working within certain tonal values.
Right.
Dave, do you ever use any of the beta, versions of any apps or anything?
Occasionally, yeah.
Have
Yeah,
you tried Fig or?
I have, yeah. Well, like I said, like Dwight, I downloaded it last night. Unfortunately, I was not able to get out to a gorgeous location like Dwight has. So I took a couple pictures last night, just trying to do a quick comparison between the standard camera app, right out of the camera, and trying to different settings just to see the differences between it, because it's one of those things of the descriptions are great on what they are, but it always helps to have like it's like, okay, here's the picture from the camera app without me touching it, and here's the difference, how it looks with the different ones, just so I can get a feel for it. And like I said, I did a couple in the standard pro, and I do like the gentle roll off with the overexposure, where if it's high contrast, like I tried it a little bit at my desk at work today, where it was a bright sunny day, and a couple of the standard or the I would say more. I tried standard. Tried standard pro. I'm looking at the app here, just kind of refresh myself. And yeah, the standard pro did a good job. It just the reduced sharpening. You really notice how much the built-in camera app in Apple really, and I have a 13 Pro Max, really pushes the sharpening.
Yeah.
To the point where without the sharpening, it's a little, because I had to use I used the 5x zoom, not 5x, 3x zoom, and it was indoors at night, so it was kind of dark. So it was a little blurry, but it looked more natural than what Apple tried to force the sharpness on top of it.
Right. Yeah, all the image processors in Fig just have the sharpening turned all the way down. I think the standard best practice, at least used to be, to apply sharpening as your final step before publishing. And as a camera app, like, is any step in there the final step? Unlikely. So I've just turned it all off at the moment. Yeah. Maybe I'll add a slider at some point, but at the moment there's no sharpening. Well, as little as Apple lets you do. Maybe there's something under the hood. But
even so, it may be selective, right? You may not want a global sharpening adjustment. It may be on the rocks in the foreground, or maybe something in the midground.
Right.
Yeah, obviously it's always better that. Well, I'll say this, for Apple's built-in camera app, and this is something me and Greg have said and other people have said, they do an 80-80. 80% of the time for 80% of the people, give them what they want.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you can just push a button and you get a sharp-ish image that you can show someone else on your phone, and most people are happy with that. But if you have the ability to say, okay, this is less process, so you have the ability to, like I said, what Dwight said, make that adjustment, saying, okay, I want this part a little bit sharper, so I can do a selective sharpening here and maybe change some here if you're one who wants to do the extra steps. So it's always, in my mind, it's always good to have that extra option, the extra flexibility. But I also thought, just straight out of the camera, like I said, I did the standard pro, just because I'm not really a raw person. I'm the hive person on the panel. That it just gave a nice natural look. Without the we're gonna force this to look a certain way versus it's nighttime with artificial lights and you're a certain distance away. You're not gonna have crisp clear shots from that distance.
Right.
Yeah. I'm becoming a bit of a hive person, I must say, because I've been using, well with Fig, the end result is a hive or however it's pronounced. But I mean, with the 16 Pro Max, I've been playing around with the photographic styles a bit too. Like, I've been dipping my toes in a lot of different things, and since I got this thing, different camera apps, and a part of it is just to see how they interact with camera control, right? And by the way, is Fig using camera control?
You can use it to take a picture, but it doesn't yet add any options to the little sliding menus.
Oh, okay. Are you working on that, or going to be, or?
Not currently. Maybe I should add it, but I found it really fiddly when I tried to use it. So I thought I was initially gonna immediately try and do it, and then I used it and I was like, I don't know. We'll see.
I think if anything, camera selection and exposure would be two
Right.
really handy things. And you know what? I know there's a lot of kickback in the community about, and when I say community, I mean the mobile photography community, iPhone users in general, about camera control. But I like it. I'm getting used to it, and I'm finding that I do use it.
Okay.
So like I know Christopher Cohen, who used to be from Filmic, and he is now in the camera department at Apple, and he worked on camera control, so he's got his hands on that. And so I sent him a message and I said, there's a lot of people giving some kickback and negative thoughts about camera control, but I told him, I said, but hey, I'm getting used to it and I'm starting to like it. I'm liking what it's able to do. And he says they're actually logging that information, all this kickback that people are doing, and then they're going to try to, see what they can do to make it better for people. So, I mean, it's in its early days, I would say. So to add maybe exposure control and camera selection in Fig, I think that would be a plus, I think. And that would be on my wish list for Fig for sure.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, thanks for.
Yeah. And now if I only have one other wish list or thing that I would like to see. I'm going to open the app itself here just so I can show you. So the shutter button,
Yeah.
I find it's a little far in. Like, I'm a landscape guy, so I find it's a little far in. Oops. What are the chances of moving it down to just the center of this whole area here? So it would be in the intersection of the three blocks of information there. That's okay. I'm not saying you need to do that. I'm just saying that would be a wish list for me.
So do you find it's only in landscape that you have the issue, or?
Yeah, actually,
Okay.
in portrait mode, like when I'm shooting like this,
Yeah.
it's really good. But even if it was down where I mentioned, I think it would be okay for me. And of course, this is subjective. I mean, this is just my thoughts.
Yeah.
Dave, Dwight, what do you guys think? About the layout and any thoughts of anything that you think could change or anything? I really hate to say that you need to change your app. I don't
No,
want
it's
I
good
don't
to
want
get
you
feedback.
but
Yeah.
this all it is just feedback.
Yeah, I mean, Greg, conversely to your view, I think on the camera button, if I had a case that would cover that thing up, I'd be happy. But I
Oh,
think it's good.
the camera control.
Yeah, to me,
Oh yeah.
it's not functional because, in my opinion, there's only one way to hold an iPhone, and this is it. I can't really show you here because the whole thing about taking an iPhone photo is maintaining stability in the camera, and I think you got to put this one hand underneath there and kind of cup it, and then
Yeah.
use your thumb. Now that being said, I think having that button over a little bit more towards the left in landscape mode would be beneficial. But yeah, I'm not a camera control fan, but I would be a fan of that button coming over a little bit more, maybe in the intersection of the controls there in landscape.
Yeah, food for thought. What do you think, Dave? Like you're pretty. Like, I know you're very limited use, of course, but
honestly, I really, of course, and I don't use the grip that Dwight has, so I just kind of
yeah,
hold it
don't-
up
I
and
don't
down.
either,
You
but
and
that's,
I'm more of using my finger versus my thumb. So position wise, horizontally, it's good for me. But again, everyone's different because you have the Max phones versus the non-Max phones versus the 16s, which are another size. So Apple now has 4 different sizes of phones, even though they're close, but they're 4 different sizes. And
Yeah.
I understand, Christian having to deal with some people have larger hands, some people have shorter hands. So you have the whole, well, this works good for this person, but it doesn't work good for this, and it won't work good on this phone. It'll work on. Plus, next year we're going to have a mini. Thank you, Scott. Yeah, not a hashtag not a button. But we're going to have, the rumors are there's going to be a I don't even want to call it mini anymore, but the non
the Air. Are you talking about the Air?
the SE
Oh,
the SE phone, which is going to be smaller. I mean, it's still going to be large for those of us who have been using iPhones for a while, but it's going to be smaller. It's going to be the cheap model, but it's still going to be powerful enough. Whenever they roll out all the AI, it'll be powerful enough to run it. So, I understand, like I said, from a designer standpoint, you have to keep all this in mind of where everything goes. And unfortunately,
I'm terrible.
it is it's trade-offs.
Yeah, I'm terrible for my thoughts on it because I'm so used to using a Max phone. I've been using a Max phone for years, and I forget that there's a smaller version of the phone. And so that being said, maybe where the button is now is probably going to be the best place for it. Just because of the smaller phones, it's not going to be so far to reach. So, just take whatever I say with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I think
definitely me too.
Luke has a good question. Does it allow like a remote shutter with a Bluetooth or something?
I haven't added specific support for that. I think I remember hearing that some camera apps just worked by changing the volume on like your AirPods,
Like on
but
your
I
headphones?
haven't tested that with Big, so I don't actually know if I need to change anything to support that.
Ah, okay.
And I haven't built a watch app or anything like that. So
Oh yeah, okay. Let's see. I was thinking of stuff earlier today, and let's see. Just gonna open the app again. I want to go to the settings section, and now here's something that's very interesting: is you can create your own image process.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that for a bit?
sure. Essentially, I feel like most people want to have a different look than most other people. Like a lot of people have like an individual style that they would like the images to have. And the idea is that you can hopefully get that style straight out of camera by setting it up yourself beforehand. It currently is pretty limited. It lets you select the capture format, so like capture a HEIF, a RAW file, or a ProRAW file, and then you can select how you want to save that file, whether you want to just save the HEIF or also save the original RAW or ProRAW. And then you can apply a LUT and adjust some basic settings like contrast and saturation. But I have plans to make it more useful in the future, but that's currently where it's at. Oh, I suppose it also lets you apply the new alpha tone curve if you select ProRAW or RAW.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's pretty cool. I've only played around with it a little bit because when the update came through with alpha, I started playing with that. And like I said, I've been playing with a lot of different things since I got this new phone, but um, uh, so I'm going to revisit it, and I'm going to see how alpha works in with it. And I found I would make a what would you call it? Would you call it a recipe? What
I
your
haven't really come up with good branding for what these different pieces should
yeah.
be called, but yeah, it's the same kind of idea.
Well, okay, so I'll call it a process for now. How's that? Because it says new image process. So I came up with a process and I took a couple of shots. And then, okay, I want to change something here. So, you can um, change the capture format to either hike, raw, or pro raw. The, guess, guess I'm going, no, that's, okay, so now once you've got, oh wait, raw and pro raw. Okay, so I've changed it to Pro Raw for example,
Right.
and then also you can set the save format to either hike or Pro Raw and hike.
Yep.
So I've got it set to hike. Gentle overexposure, you can turn that on and off. So tone mapping, this is cool. You got the standard, you got the alpha tone curve, and the alpha dramatic tone curve. This is giving you some pretty versatile choices what to do here. And then you've got noise reduction. You can have auto or custom. And now if you hit custom, then you can go the luminance noise reduction and the color noise reduction. You can set those. And then if I was to go to keep that at auto, now I can add steps. So this is where it gets juicy, folks. You can add a set for or add a step for contrast, so you can really bump the contrast up or take it down. You can add a step for saturation, so you can make it really vibrant, or you can really tone it down to make it really muted. And same with the vibrance, you can really boost the vibrance, or you can tone that down. But then you can also add a LUT, and I don't have any LUTs on my phone, but this is really versatile. You can really go to town with these image process settings. And that, to me, when I first started playing around with that, I thought, this is really cool because you can really personalize, an image process and make it your own. I guess it's kind of like, you know, um, film simulations and stuff like that. But this is kind of going to me. This takes it on a whole new level because it's so versatile in what it can do. Um, so what kind of what was the thinking behind creating that, Christian? Was it have you used a Fuji film camera with the film simulations, or was it just something that kind of developed over time as you were developing the app, like just ideas that popped into your mind?
I think I have been inspired by Fuji. I did used to have an X100 a few years ago, before I managed to submerge it in water. Um,
Oh no.
but yeah, I just feel like a lot of these things are kind of hidden behind the curtain, right? Like you capture an image and you're just left with whatever it's given you. And trying to reveal some of that, and maybe maybe later down the track add some sort of education elements to explain how these things are going to impact your photo. I think it's a kind of a big opportunity to let people have more control over how their images come out of the camera.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a welcomed element in a camera app for sure. I don't know myself, and I've got a lot of camera apps on my phone. I don't use them all regularly or anything, but I don't know of any that are so versatile in coming up with a preset.
Yeah, this
guys,
is
have you guys come up
no,
with?
this
Have you guys
is
seen anything?
this is the first time I've actually really looked at this piece of the application. And Christian, I got to tell you, this is a brilliant concept in my opinion. I do
you.
have a couple questions.
Sure.
Let's say, so I'm relatively new to photography in the last couple of years, so I'm not sure what an alpha tone curve is or an alpha dramatic tone curve. Is that something that most photographers should know, or is that something that could be explained to maybe a layperson like myself or somebody else? I guess that's my first question.
Sure.
The second question is, looks like the luminance and the color noise is set at 50. Is that 50% of what would normally be processed in an iPhone photo, or is that just a random kind of middle setting there?
Sure. So I can start with the alpha tone curve. Alpha tone curve is not a shared or it's a fig thing. It's not a
Okay.
common.
Got it. Okay.
It's the alpha branding is in software development we call new features in alpha, like before they go into beta. It's when they're unfinished. So that's just my sort of work in progress image process, and it's the same. So like if you're on the main settings screen and you can select alpha or alpha dramatic, they're applying a tone curve as part of that, and that is what I'm referencing when I say alpha tone curve in the image editor.
Okay, I should have known that alpha, beta, and then really I should have known that. So I didn't know if that was some photography specific thing. So thank you for that.
And sorry, what was the second question? It was the
luminance noise and color noise defaults
right.
at 50, and I was just wondering, really, what does that 50% or that 50 represent? And the other thing I was thinking also when we started talking about recipes and adding steps here, maybe eventually that would be something that would be maybe shareable within a community. That'd be kind of neat.
It would be great to have them shareable. Back to the noise reduction, that's how much noise reduction is applied. Like, how do I describe this? There's a feature in Apple's tools that they provide where you can tell them how much noise reduction to apply. And I'm just saying apply fully or apply none at all. And it's a slider that much. It's not how much does Apple traditionally apply to this photo.
Okay.
So like they might choose to apply 20% or 50% depending on the photo. And if you set this at say 50%, it's always going to be 50%. It's not going to adjust per photo.
Okay, so that 50 just kind of represents the halfway mark between the sliders.
Maximum and the minimum.
Right. Okay. All right, that makes sense.
Regarding the sharing of the sort of presets or recipes, like I do love that idea. There is one concern, which is if you've bought a lot and you've included that in your process, you can't really then go and share that.
Right.
So,
well, would there be a way to disable sharing for that particular
yeah, of course. There could be
if it's got
something
a
like
LUT
that
in
where
it?
it's like you can't share this, or
Yeah.
you can share it without the LUT, or even maybe include a link for someone else to go and buy it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Because I predict some really incredible images coming out of this just based on the settings that I've looked at. And that'd be kind of neat to have a community to be able to share within.
yeah, I think it's a great opportunity.
I'll say
Yeah,
one thing I like when you're doing
yeah, go ahead, Dave.
when you're doing your create image process is the ability to hit the plus on the test image on top. And that way you can experiment with the sliders and see exactly what the result is.
Right.
You can just, oh, okay, that's too much, or no, that's good, and like I said, since you can make more than one, you can make a landscape image process and then a portrait one, cloudy day versus sunny day, and use test images that would match that. So you could say, okay, on this day, I notice we're in this situation. I'll use this process to get the look I want. So that makes it really powerful, but really straightforward.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin Barrett in the chat says shareable recipes would be great. Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. And I think that could possibly help drive a community once Fig gets released to the public, and gets on the market. You know, it's uh, it's getting noticed, in my opinion. And I don't say that just because we're talking about it. I think it's, you know, I've seen some stuff on Threads with it. So I think once it does, you know, get released, I think I think that you could very easily create a community, with this app. So speaking of getting released, any plans when? Because I'm sure there's probably a lot of people wondering.
I feel like the pressure's kind of come off a little bit after I opened up the beta and iOS 18 came out, so anyone can try it. I was originally trying to sort of release it around the same time as the new iPhones, but I missed that. I was on holiday and I just didn't get it to a point where I was happy with it. And then because I missed that sort of self-imposed deadline, I'm kind of rethinking some things, thinking maybe I can make it an extra level better before I release it, because you can only really launch once. So trying to do a great launch might be worth waiting for, I think.
Yeah, for sure. You only got one shot at a good launch. So do you have a much of a list of things that you want to try with it before you
I
go
have a
ahead and do that?
never-ending list of features I
Oh, is
want
that
to add.
right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Um, oh, Dale has a good question in the chat. Are these he's calling them looks, which is another good name. Are they baked into the JPEGs or RAWs? Can you imagine it's linked to a RAW, right? Or you can't imagine it's linked to a RAW. So yeah, so these you know, image process steps that you add, they will definitely be baked into a JPEG or a hike,
Yeah,
but obviously you can't bake them into a pro RAW file, correct?
yeah, that's correct. I'm not sure if I'm like spoiling anything here, but one of the features that I want to add is to allow you to save, if you save a pro raw and the HEIC, to then
Hmm.
go into your image gallery and just change the pipeline or the process after the fact. I think that would be a really useful addition.
Ah, oh yeah.
It does
On
require you to save.
on the pro
Sorry.
RAW?
So the raw files, you can't bake in extra looks to them, right? It's like the
Right.
bare raws are just raw sensor data.
Yeah.
And the pro raws are a linear image, which, I mean, maybe you could somehow adjust and save, but Apple hasn't shared how to do that. So, and I don't know how to do that. So I was thinking,
You
yeah,
know,
save the raw and the heat together, and then
yeah,
reprocess it after the fact if you want to
yeah.
change
Okay.
the look.
Yeah, because Film at First Light, when that app came out, um, uh, it has all these looks that you can apply, you know, before or after the shot type of thing, and that's Chris Cohen again. That's one of his apps. I asked him way back then, could you apply these looks to a Pro Raw? And all he said was interesting. And then I never heard anything about it again. So I'm going to assume that it was not possible. That was long before he became an employee at Apple, in the camera department. So I mean, I'm going to assume that you cannot do that because you're talking with you're dealing with a DNG file, even though it's like you say, it's not Bayer, but it's still a DNG file, right? So you know, it would be kind of cool to be able to do that, but you know, That's one thing I've learned about iPhone photography and mobile in general is that there's limitations, all kinds of them. So let's see. And anybody in the chat have many more questions for Christian before we move on to our recent photos? Dwight and Dave, anything else you want to?
Yeah, Christian, quick question on the format. It looks like you have the HE. Is there any chance of maybe being able to export to a JPEG?
I could add that. I haven't added it yet. I have had some other requests for like different formats. Currently, it saves pretty large HEIF files, like they're not as small as Apple's ones.
Okay.
So I'll probably add some options around there, and maybe add like the 48 megapixel capture option because that's not available either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only reason I ask is I can't pull the that format into Photoshop. I have to export it as a JPEG before I can bring it in. But
right.
that would be just something to help my workflow. You know, I don't know how it would benefit the greater population, but
Us beta testers, we're greedy. we have all kinds of these ideas. But yeah, the 48 megapixel capture, I think that's pretty cool. Would that be something that would be possible also, like would now that the 16 Pros have 48 megapixel in the ultra wide, would that be doable as well?
Yeah, I expect that the 48 megapixel images are available from that camera. I haven't actually tested it, but I don't see why they wouldn't be.
One thing I'm noticing is that it's one of these deals where, because it's like an f2.2, I believe it is, aperture, it's not going to give you the 48 megapixels unless it's bright enough to do so. If it's not bright, then it's going to start pixel binning and give you a 12. And it's got to be good and bright. I hope they kind of fix that a little bit, or maybe, you know, a camera developer like yourself can maybe find a way to force that 48 megapixels to work in slightly darker conditions, because I've missed out on a lot of 48 well, not a lot, but I mean I've missed out on some 48 megapixel shots with that ultra wide because it's just not bright enough, and it's kind of cheesing me off a little bit.
That 48 megapixel ultra wide camera, I think I read that they didn't really increase the sensor size when they moved it to 48 megapixels. So they just squeezed in more pixels. So it kind of makes sense that it's better, but not like dramatically better like the 48 megapixel sensor we see on the main camera.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, it is f2.2 as opposed to f1.78 in the main camera, or fusion camera as they call it now. So it's not going to gather the light as good. And with lenses and sensors that small, Dave, you can back me up on this. We're talking about physics.
Yeah.
It's
and you
not
can't get around physics. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that a lot of people forget, is that there's, like you said, it would have been nice if they would have increased the sensor size when they went 48 megapixel. I don't know if there's reasons why they didn't do that other than economics. There it may just be there's not a, you know, you can get an ultra wide sensor with 48 megapixels to put on there, or it may not fit in the camera to get a bigger sensor size. Because that's one thing to remember, is that even though the camera got bigger, I don't think the Max got, and the rumor was they wanted to have the 5x zoom in the smaller camera, but to do that they needed to make the smaller camera bigger, but they wanted to keep the gap. They didn't want like a 6.3 and a 6.7. That those two cameras would be too close. So they made the bigger camera bigger just to give you that gap, that kind of artificial gap in size. Mm-hmm. So it could be that they looked at it and said, well, we would love a bigger sensor, but we don't have the room internally. Also, to get the better battery, you know, we need the battery this size, we need this size, and the sensor to make it bigger. We don't have the room in there. This is pretty much all phones, modern phones, they are a master of packing. It's kind of like the ultimate Tetris of knowing this block goes here and this goes here, but this needs to go here, and we need to fit this in here and have the thermals so you're not overheating, and make sure all the engineering works. So it could be next year, unfortunately, saying, oh, we were able to shrink this and shrink this, therefore we now have a bigger sensor. And if the 17 really is a little bit better, a little bit more of a change from the 16, because just looking from the outside, without the size difference, the 15 and 16 physically kind of look similar in terms of the case of the shape and everything else. So next year they may say, okay, this is our, every 3 year to make a different shape to the phone a little bit, that we're moving things around so we can have a bigger sensor for the ultra wide, and we're now going to give you a 48 megapixel 5x, which would be wonderful, since other phones can do better. So we'll have to see. But yeah, I think a lot of that is just like we said, it's physics. There's only so much you can get off with physics without throwing a bunch of AI processing like Google does. Google says, well, I mean, in terms of Google says, okay, this is our hardware. Now we're going to do the software to make up for the hardware. Where Apple has had, we have really strong hardware and we're going to try to make whatever adjustments with the software. It's just two strategies to deal with images.
Yeah. Kevin, we're not jumping into rumors just yet, but this is too funny this is too funny to pass up. They're supposedly going to add a heat pipe in the 17 for offloading the thermals. Oh, that's gold. Yeah, I mean, what you've done with Fig, Christian, is really, really cool. I'm really liking it. I'm going to dive more into the image, processing steps and stuff like that. Especially now that alpha is in there. And I on my drive today, we went to this place to. I'll post some of these on Threads later, but there's a lookout. You go up this hill and around and go into a parking lot, and you can look out over the bay, and you can see what's supposedly called Blue Mountain in the distance. It's not really a mountain, but these pictures in particular I'm talking about are just looking from the high point, looking down at the road, and there's some beautiful fall colors in these trees just on the side of the road. So I took some. Let's see here. I used natural, standard. I think I went through them all. I think I used natural, standard, standard pro, alpha, and alpha dramatic, and I took a picture of the same scene with each one of these different image processes. So it's really cool to see the difference in all of them. And so I'll post those on Threads, and my Threads is in the show notes. Everybody, you can find it there, and all of our links to Threads are in there, and I'm putting Christians in as well. And you can see the difference. I'll try to remember which one's which, and I'll label them accordingly. And but it's really cool to see all the different customization things and all the different stuff that you put in this app. So I mean, it's not even out yet, but congratulations, it's a job well done.
Thank you.
So we'll finish off with this question as far as this segment goes. Okay, so you don't really have a timeline for a release yet, but have you thought much about pricing?
Yeah, the tricky question.
Yeah, so and you probably knew it was coming.
So,
And if you don't know, that's okay. I mean, just say you don't know, and we'll move on. But
I mean, I'm happy to talk about pricing, but I will say that nothing is concrete. or
Oh yeah,
decided
for sure.
yet,
Yeah,
especially if I'm not going to release for a while. Um,
yeah,
so a lot of people don't like subscriptions, um, but it will probably be a subscription. It will probably be free to try with some good features, but the best ones will be behind the paywall. Um,
hmm
I think one point I would want to make about that I think a lot of customers don't realize, is that a subscription often aligns incentives between developers and customers better than a one-time purchase. As a developer, if you're doing a one-time purchase, your incentives are kind of get a sale and then forget about the person. I mean, there's some like indirect negatives from that, like you won't get word of mouth and that kind of thing if people don't like it after purchase. But compared to a subscription where you have to continually have the app working well and adding new value, um, I feel like it just aligns better. So,
yeah.
and also it's much easier to make a sustainable business as a developer.
Yeah, you know, and I've mentioned this a number of times. Was I don't know how long ago I started talking about this, but you know, when it comes to subscriptions, um, you know, it's what keeps the development going for the app. You know, it keeps your lights on. You know, like Kevin says in the chat, developers need to eat too. Um, and some people don't realize that there are some developers out there where this is their livelihood. This is their 9 to 5. This is their day job. Um, there's a lot of developers that do it as a sideline type of thing, but in order to develop, you have to have generally the latest. Okay, we're talking about iPhone development here. You generally have to have the latest iPhone, or at least something that's going to run um, the latest operating system. You know, and that's my argument for getting this is the fact that we do this show, and if I'm able to, I will always get the newest one if I'm able. I'm not always going to be able, but I'm going to try. But but for developing, you know, you've got to make sure it works on everything. So you not only have to have probably the latest and greatest, but you probably have to have, you know, something older just to make sure that the code is going to work, you know, in something from the past. Because you know, with the hardware changes over the years, sometimes code can break. I mean, I'm just guessing, but you're nodding, so I'm thinking that's a true statement. um, but you know, a lot of people don't realize that developing an app, it's hard to do. I've said this before too. I tried to take an iOS course, a course on iOS development, um, and I couldn't keep it going because I didn't have the time for one. Um, and what I found was that it was darn hard to do. Like it's like learning a whole new language, and it's a language like none other, as far as I'm concerned. I think with the advances in Swift, I think it's getting easier and easier for developers who are very knowledgeable with the code, because Apple really slims down, you know, the code and everything else and makes things work better, stronger, faster, I guess you could say. So when it comes to subscriptions and things like that, I've subscribed. Subscribe to 2 or 3 different things, maybe 4 or 5. I don't know. I have to check. And but if it's something that you're going to use a lot, don't hesitate because you know it's it's that then it becomes worth it. You know, it becomes worth it to use. It becomes worth it to for the developer to keep going and all that stuff. So, and I think you know over time, if the Fig community can grow, you know maybe that'll help sustain the business as well. That's my 2 cents on subscriptions and that sort of thing. So, anybody else have any last questions before we move on?
No.
No, we're good. Okay. Before we go to our recent photos, I want to touch on something that I was supposed to touch on right off the bat, but I was just too excited to get Christian on the show. So Dwight has a couple of images that we're going to look at that he got honorable mentions for in the Mobiography uh, Awards photo contest this year, earlier this year. So I will bring up these really cool shots. Here's the first one. And I really like this, and you can probably imagine why.
Yeah, this one was it was a macro shot, obviously, Greg, and I honestly don't remember if it was an external lens. I think it was,
It sure looks like it, yeah.
but what I did was I really increased. I went into Topaz and I increased the resolution by 5 times before I cropped in on it, so I wouldn't lose any pixels.
Oh, wow.
So I was able to crop in really tight on this thing, and then just some minor tonal adjustments. And yeah, I think that one turned out pretty well. That was in the I think in the spring category.
Yeah. That's cool. I don't know how it didn't, win place or show at all because, you know what, I haven't gone through and looked at the images, but this is freaking amazing. Like,
Thank you.
I say that because I love macro. I wrote a book on this stuff, and so it kind of holds a place close to my chest. But I really like it. What do you guys think, Christian? What do you think of this one, real quick?
I think it's amazing. I love the purple leaf and then the bright, just really bright bee. I wouldn't be getting that close to any bees myself, so yeah, no, I think it's great. And the detail on the wing, yeah, really nice.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, like Christian said, the contrast with the colors, and you can just see the delicateness of the wing with the structure shown, and the fact that the wings being translucent have almost like a purple tinge to them, because you can see the purple of the flower through the wings themselves.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, well, that's very well deserving of an honorable mention for sure. I would have put it up in the top 3, I think.
Thank you.
Just with maybe I'm a little biased.
Lucky accident by me.
Yeah. So here's your second one. This is obviously a digital art piece.
Yeah, so this was an abstract, obviously, and when COVID started, I was really kind of going down the rat hole because everywhere you look is a texture. I was taking pictures of everything, and what those become are, blending layers for artwork. And then I got into, light trails and motion blur. So the figure you see sitting there really is directly out of camera with using a third-party app and taking a motion blur photo. So essentially, I'll push the button and then I'll just move the camera just slightly, and then I'll push the button again and turn it off, and I get an abstract figure from the motion blur. And then what I'll do is I'll isolate that figure, and then I will use different textures that I've gotten over time and blend them and try to make it look harmonious with the colors. And again, other happy accidents. I run it through different apps, and I think this is just one I got lucky at, and yeah, it's one of the things I like to do with my photos.
Yeah. Christian, you ever play around with stuff like this in your free time? Just for something to do, just to see what you can come up with? Have you ever, tried to create something like this?
Never. Looking at this, I would have no idea how to make something like this. It's wonderful. It's the kind of thing you can imagine on a gallery wall, right? Like it looks very just sort of harmonious and pleasing, and but also like it makes you question, like, what is this, right? It's got that kind of unknown element that I
It
really
does,
like.
doesn't it? It makes you just ask questions in your mind. Yeah.
Well, it's obviously a figure, right? And then you have to
Yeah.
kind of look at it like what's going on there. What what might she be looking at, or that type of stuff. Yeah, and I think that's
Hmm.
kind of the intention of the photo when you're putting it together.
Yeah. Now, Dave, you do some pretty, you know, uh, what's the word? Interesting, clever edits
Weird. You can
in
say
your
weird.
photos.
Yeah, you
Weird.
can
Okay,
say
I'll
weird's
if you want
fine.
to go
Yeah,
there, I'll
weird's
go
fine.
weird. Okay. But they're cool, you know.
Yeah.
And spoiler alert, we'll see one of those coming up.
Hmm.
But uh, what do you think? You know, this is kind of in your wheelhouse a little bit, I would say, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, especially with trying to make something where it's not a unlike the B image, which was a sharp, lifelike look. This is more giving an impression of what was there versus trying to give a sharp, similar to if you and people may yell at me, more like a painting where you're trying to get a feel or a vibe of an area, not necessarily an exact copy of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think
Kevin says print
there's
it.
room for both. I mean, there are sometimes you want to have that. This is exactly what I saw, or this is what I felt, or this is
Mm-hmm.
what I experienced. But sometimes you experience something, you're like it's beyond the concrete that was there. And that's
Yeah.
where editing like this, like what Dwight did, could really show and expand than just what was the concrete shown.
Yeah. And I think this would look great printed on canvas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like probably a good 4 feet square. You know, a nice big canvas like that. I think that it would really, I think it would really show well. So, good job, Dwight.
Yeah, thank you guys.
You
I
know,
appreciate it.
I've
Thanks, Kevin.
I've contemplated on submitting images to these things, but I just discovered that I just keep getting paid to be rejected, or I pay because these things, you know, you have to pay to enter these things, which is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they cost money to run them. So um, I keep thinking I'm gonna just pay to get rejected because I've never been selected for anything yet, and I've entered a few of them. Like there's the, you know, the IPP awards or whatever it is, and um, or the IP awards, iPhone photography awards, whatever they are, and then Mobiography. Andy does a great job with that, with that whole thing, you know, the magazine and everything. And I will put a bug in his ear, Christian, for you know, about your app. Maybe he can showcase it. You know, maybe when it becomes a public release, you know, that would be a good time for him to put something like in his magazine about that.
Oh, thanks.
Are you familiar with his magazine?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so it's digital only, and it's every 2 months, I believe, it comes out.
The Mobiography. Yeah.
Yeah, and he, you know, there's some how tos and articles and interviews and different things like that in there. So, um, when Fig becomes a public, you know, public app, I will definitely shoot him an email with you know, with the app and all that stuff, and you know, see what he thinks. Maybe he'll feature it in the magazine, which could help generate a few new customers.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it.
Okay, all right. So now we are going to go on to our recent photos, and let me pull these up. And okay, so Christian, what we do is we pull photos up just like you've seen so far, and now people on YouTube can obviously see them here now, but in the podcast, once it comes out a couple of days from now, um, people will be able to see the image in their podcast player on their phone.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's unless they're on Spotify, then they can't. I don't know why Spotify can't show an enhanced podcast, but um, according to the analytics, most of the people are using Apple Podcasts, and then I think Overcast is the next biggest one, and but it works on Overcast and Pocket Cast and a bunch of apps like that. Um, but I think it's a great way for listeners after the fact to see what we're talking about, and then they can relate everything and put everything together. So that being said, we will go through these. I've got Christian's lined up first. We got two from Christian and then one from each of us three. So for a total of five. Generally, we do two each for six, but um, there's no way we can go through eight, I think, and keep the podcast at a decent length here. So we'll bring yours up and we'll just get you to just say a few words about it.
Sure. So both of mine are actually taken on the same day. A couple of weeks ago when I was traveling to LA. And this is in Tokyo. This is at a train station. I just like the sort of the rhythm of the colors and the shadows. It's a picture of sort of very commercial buildings. There's like an overpass. There's a big wall covered in greenery. The foreground is the train platform. But yeah, I don't know what else there is to say. It's just kind of light and shadows and color.
Yeah, just one of those things that caught your eye and made you want to grab a picture of it. I'm going to assume that you took it with Fig camera.
Yes. I think this was like a custom process with like a Pro Raw and a LUT.
Oh, okay.
Christian, I think this is great. I really like the leading lines in from the lower right, and then you've got the cable in the roof of the structure. It just kind of pulls you from right to left, and just a little bit of touchy yellow, that bright red, and that blue in the background, and then just the overall film look, I think is really amazing, and it's not over processed. I love it.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
What do you think, Dave? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I had cats running around, so I muted myself.
Oh, okay.
The fact that it's just kind of discrete shocks of color, I like, with the the separation with the yellow and the red and the blue and the green in the background there. But everything else, like I said, being very big city neutral color. So the colors really stand out, especially since they're all kind of going in the same direction.
Yeah. The vibrancy of the colors, although they're not like full blown vibrant, but they're bright enough that they're very distinct in the let's call it a concrete jungle. It's like brilliant colored wildflowers on an otherwise mundane desert type of like mountainside or something. It just the colors, the way they pop, really makes it interesting, and your eye gets drawn to each of those colors more so, I think, than the concrete and that sort of thing. And the leading lines and all that. They just, I don't know about anybody else, but my eyes just keep going around and around and around this image. And when I see that, I think that's a very captivating photo. I think it just, it's a good composition and just something that keeps your interest. That's for sure.
Thanks.
So next we'll go to Dave's, and
Yeah.
this is, you didn't disappoint.
Now, the app I used to use to replace the Sky PS camera looks like it's no longer available.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I tried to download it, tried to log in, and I got an error from Adobe saying, this is either not supported. It's one of those cryptic error messages. Didn't come out and say this program's no longer available, but it was like, well, it could be either be this or other things going on. So that I'm actually able to use Pick Collage. And it does a good job with cutting out the foreground image, and then you can do a search on background images. And I did like a threatening sky. So I did that image just to kind of replace it because the sky here was completely just kind of solid gray, overcast. And then I threw it into Visionist to do a little extra with maybe a little extra texture and the color itself to give it that kind of orange hue on the towers themselves, and to bring out the blue and the red in the sky that was going there and make it a little abstract with the people in the foreground. So this was actually taken right before a race I had, not last weekend, but the weekend before. And it was a light drizzly day. And these are actually dorms on the University of Pittsburgh campus. Unimaginatively called towers.
Yeah.
There's 4 of them. And yeah, Litchfield Towers. They were built in the early 60s. So it's that kind of, we're going to make it modern by making it concrete and little windows. That was popular at the time in the US. And they're still like one of the larger dorms for freshmen on campus. And it's kind of in the middle of campus itself. So, and they're round. So, and when I just happened to look up and it was like, you see these 2 towers just kind of going up from the angle you're at. And I just had a feeling of it, especially with the gray overcast and the, like the gray concrete of the building, it kind of gave me a ominous kind of horror sci-fi kind of feel to it. So that's why when I did the editing, I added the colors and the threatening sky in the background, and the people in front who were just kind of getting ready to basically get ready for the run.
Yeah. Just real quick, Luke says that the architectural style of the towers may be called brutalism.
Yeah. No, I could definitely see brutalism there, where that was just really popular, where instead of the older buildings which were like red brick or sandstone or something on that nature, marble look, it was like, we're going to make this really stark, and because that was the idea of it's modern. The older buildings had all these weird kind of shapes and gargoyles on top and little bumps and putouts, and it's like, no, we want to be modern, so we're going to make it smooth and harsh, basically as harsh looking as possible.
Yeah. What do you think of the edit, Christian?
It's so dramatic. Like, it makes me feel like I'm immediately watching a film where it's like a nightmare sequence or something, where it's almost sort of out of body. I think it's impressive. I like how the buildings like they fit the tone of the sky and the foreground. Like you can see the blue reflected on the concrete at the top, whereas the bottom of the towers really is that sort of orange. Yeah, it's great.
Oh, thanks. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're almost waiting for the alien to come out of this
Yeah.
in the sky.
Exactly.
Yeah, I never thought of that, but you're right with the like kind of like the reflection of the blue at the top. Like it looks like it's reflecting on the building itself. What do you think, Dwight?
Yeah, I mean, this is fun, right? And this is a testament to being able to do something different with your photos. It releases a creative side, from Dave, and I think this is just fun. This is fun to do. So, yeah, I'm familiar with that app. I think I have every single art app out there too. So.
Well, Dave is pretty proficient at mixing them up for sure.
Yeah, and that's key. And what's nice about that is, sometimes you can selectively add by masking, certain overlays from different apps into different areas and that type of stuff. Yeah, it's fun working with layers in between apps.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, very cool. So Dwight, we'll go on to your next one.
That looks like my out of camera shot, Greg, I think. Yeah, that okay. So and
It
that's
was the only
fine.
one that was in that message like
Oh,
this.
well, we can look at it and we can talk about this being on the Fig app, and this is out of camera and unedited in the alpha mode, which I believe shoots in Pro Raw and then outputs as a hike. So yeah, I mean this one isn't my finished product, which is fine. But this I think is good to show the audience what out of camera looks like, at least in this alpha mode. I don't think it's bad. I think it's fine. I think what I did was I lifted the shadows a little bit in the foreground, in the water. I brought back a little bit of the saturation, I think, in the water. I didn't I might have, when I brightened the foreground, it really brightened up that sand. So I probably toned that down a little bit with a curve adjustment and and like a multiply blend mode just to tone that down a bit. But again, it's out of camera. I think it looks pretty good and a nice film like photo.
Yeah. I think there's a pretty good amount of contrast in it. It's I thought it was finished. I don't know if there's much that I would do with that at all myself. What do you think,
Yeah,
Dave?
yeah. Nothing needs to really be done. I just I like to put my paws on every photo. So.
Yeah. Dave, you're muted.
Oh,
There
okay,
you
there
go.
we go. No, I mean, like I said, this is kind of what nice about Fig is it gives you that film look to it, and where Apple can throw in all the heavy processing, extra sharpening, which can be useful at times, but this just gets the feeling of like a film camera. Literally, what if you're used to either I've never used a DSLR, but I have used film a good amount in the past, and this is a feeling of a film camera, which is a really nice feel. And just the again, we were talking about the leading lines. You have the leading lines kind of going off into the fog haze in the distance there, but just that nice little pop of color that's not over processed. We're looking at you, Samsung. You can see the red, but it's not like screaming at you red. It's a nice balanced look.
What do you think, Christian?
I like it. And I think it really does feel like you're on a beach on a cold day. Like, I love that the sky blends into the water perfectly without a horizon line. And I like the red and the green, and they're really not like in your face, but they're still obviously easy to see. It's a really nice image.
Yeah. Yeah. It's uh, I mean, I can't wait to see your edited version, Dwight. But like I say, this looks like it's finished to me. Yeah, I mean, I could see maybe boosting the reds just a little bit to make the flowers pop a little more, but I don't know. I like it. I like it as is for sure.
I'll put my edited version on Threads and I'll tag both of you or the three of
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Sounds good. All right. So mine is I did. You guys don't even Dave and Dwight haven't even seen what I was gonna do yet. So inside baseball, we've got a shared photo album in photos that we put our pictures in that we're going to talk about, and I deliberately waited because I wasn't sure which one I was going to do yet. And as it turns out, I took this one about an hour before, or an hour and a half or so before we came online here, while I was out walking the dog. So this is just a street in my neighborhood, and I shot it with Fig camera in the alpha setting, and I I did tone it down a little bit with some contrast, and but I wanted to maintain the detail in the shadows, um, in the foreground here, and let's see, what else did I do? Up in the sky area, I boosted the saturation of the oranges and reds, and I toned down the yellow a bit because on the street here, this was a little too bright for my liking. So I decreased the luminance of the yellow, not so much the saturation. Well, a little bit of the saturation, but the luminance I brought down a little bit to maintain the texture in the road. And then added a vignette, and all this was done in Lightroom Mobile. So, and then I added a vignette and I retained the highlights so that this um, drain grate here on the road would be nice and brilliant, like bright. If I didn't retain the highlights in the vignette, then it would have been dark and very very low detail in that part of the image. But I think that's pretty much all I did with it, and I wanted to see how Fig performed in a darker shot. And you know what? Um, I zoomed in on it, like I pinched in on it in my edit, and the noise level was very low compared to what I thought I would get. So I was quite pleasantly surprised with that. I played around with the noise reduction, but only ever so slightly. In fact, maybe I didn't even move the noise reduction. Maybe it was just a sharpening. When I sharpened it, I made sure I didn't, like, I adjusted the masking on the sharpening so that it left the it just basically concentrated on the edges for sharpening and not so much the whole thing. Otherwise, any noise that was there, it would have kind of emphasized that a little bit too much. But that's basically the edit, and I just wanted to see how it performed with a night shot, and I was impressed.
Yeah, yeah, total agreement. I just like you said, it's a nice balanced look, and having that little bit darker. I like the little bit of red in the sky too,
Yeah, I was
in the
hoping for more
cloud.
color.
It's just a hint of red. It's not screaming. It's just a nice little hint of red.
Yeah,
I like this.
it worked. It. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I find I often am attracted to dark photos, and so this kind of ticks the boxes for me. Um, I presume it's like a safe street, but I still find myself like peering into all the shadows. Like, is anybody there?
Oh,
So
yeah.
like, I like that kind of mood. I think it's great. Yeah, and I do like
Oh,
the
nice.
reflection on the grate.
Yeah, yeah. It. I guess it does portray some mood, and but luckily it is a safe street. It's uh, it's in a decent part of town, I guess.
Yeah,
uh,
it's good for this time of year. It's spooky, almost like I'm waiting for Jason to walk out during Halloween or something.
guys, I gotta live on this street. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I see what you mean by that though, like it kind of if I had maybe muted the colors a bit, maybe it would look more like a movie set, for a movie like that. I never thought of that. Maybe I'll play around with that and see what comes up. But I just muted myself, sorry. It's definitely a safe street, and my main reason for taking it at the time that I did was to see how Fig performed in a darker environment, and I was really pleased with it. In fact, the right here is the green flare from the street light here, and with the iPhone 16 Pro Max, it's that they've added that um, you know anti-reflective coating or whatever, and it's getting better, in these phones. I think that would have been more predominant in an older phone, like I remember my 12 Pro Max was really bad for stuff like that. But no, I think it's getting better. So finally, we've got another one from Christian, and this I would assume is from your trip to LA. I think you said it was the same day, right? As the other one?
Yeah, yeah. So this is just standard airplane shot of the window, but it's right as the sunrise is happening. So there's this sort of brilliant glow on the window frame, and you can still see the dark sky outside. So yeah, like I said, I like dark images. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
that's
that the
nice.
yeah, go ahead, Dwight.
Yeah, it's nice. I like, it's kind of a cool tone inside and a warm tone outside. And again, uh, I think you've got a nice natural flair for, drawing the eye in this case, from left to right, those windows, and then beyond, out onto the horizon line. So yeah, this is neat. Again, film look, not overly processed. I like it.
thanks.
Yeah, I was gonna just comment on the way the wing gets distorted, like, curved like that from the glass in the window, which is I think it's kind of a cool effect. Most people that show an image of the wing of the plane, it's more of the wing, whereas this is just a little bit of it, but it's just the angle that it was taken on with the what do you call it, the refraction or whatever in the glass. I think it's kind of cool how it turned out. What do you think, Dave?
No, agreed, and not really much more to add. Just really nice photo, and again with the color, you have the golden glow, and you have the sky going from a light blue to a really deep blue as it goes up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, cool.
Nature's gradient.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, well, thanks for sending those in, Christian. Uh, I think it's just a real fun exercise to talk about pictures like this, and that's why we do this segment, because I think it maybe it can spark some creativity for any of the viewers or anybody that looks at these images, and that I know it does for me. Um, sometimes I've seen a picture from Dave or Dwight or anybody that's been on here before and shows these pictures, and there's been times when I just want to go and emulate that picture somehow. I'll never get a caddy like Dave's, though. That was cool, the blue caddy. But well, I guess that's all for tonight. 'Cause we don't want to tie you up all day, Christian. I believe you're supposed to be working, or at some point. No, I mean, anyway.
Yeah, I sent
So
you guys. I tagged you guys on Threads, so you have the finished image.
okay,
So that's on there. Greg, I texted it to you as well. And Christian, I wish you all the best on this app. And what I
Thank you.
see so far is really exciting to me, and I look forward to playing with it a lot more. And I'll support you going forward for sure.
Oh, thanks so much.
And I highly encourage your listeners, Greg, to download this and play with it and jump on this journey with us.
and definitely get in on it while it's in beta,
Yeah.
because it's open to everybody now. We'll put a link. I think there is a link in the show notes for the beta, and by all means, give it a whirl and give Christian the feedback, because that's what the purpose of these betas are. It's all about getting the feedback. Excuse me. And Christian got some feedback from us tonight, and but I'm sure that there's been other people that have given their feedback, and um, I just think it's a really cool camera app. There's so many different ones out there, but this one, I always wonder what sets it apart. And I think the biggest thing that sets us apart is the fact that we can create our own processes, and that's going to be fun to play around with. So, like Dwight says, all the best with it, and thank you very, very much for taking time out of your day. And just so everybody knows, it's like 10:30 at night for Dave and I here. It's like 7:30 for Dwight, but it's 11:30 in the morning for Christian tomorrow. He's in the future. So you know, again, thanks for coming on, and stick around for a minute after we go off the air, and I hope everybody takes a look at the show notes and finds Christian on Threads, and I put your Instagram there, and a link to
thanks.
the app and everything else. So, and all our links are there, and you can find us in the iPhoneography podcast Facebook group, and other places. All the links are there, and thanks everybody in the chat room for following along live on YouTube, and we hope you all enjoy the pictures when you get them in the podcast app. So I guess on that note, we'll see everybody on the next one.
Good night,
Thanks so much
everybody.
for having me on.
Have a great one, everyone.
Take care.